reflects the reality and which reflects the views and situation on the ground, and also the reprisal, the law, the mechanism in addressing that. And there should be a real element of absolute zero tolerance. Maybe it should not be the professor colleagues who are in the jury. There should be an independent element of jury to address that, so that there is no, patronizing element or conflict of interest. The second, I think the point is also here really education. Education, information sharing, understanding where to reach out, and that type of mechanism, and supporting the students who can feel comfortably and securely to go and approach for that service and support when there is a need, or abuse of powers in one way or the other. Clear procedure, clear reprisal system, and it's done not with favors, but absolutely with zero tolerance. The third point is also to have a clear guidelines in terms of what is right and what is wrong to those perpetrators and abusers, so they know their space and what they can do or not do, and etc. I think that element of educating among management, staff, or anybody would be also extremely important. The fourth is this, system of victim online, like 24 service, anonymous, etc. So there can be a real availability of that anytime when it's needed, and the institution really need to seriously look at it in establishing that, and then the fifth is a strong disciplinary measure, as I was mentioning before, in terms of reprisals, like including, dismissal. It's really fundamental. And lastly, these stories which have been shared. What has happened to those who have really misused their power? And so commonly sharing these statistics and information. I'm not talking about confidentiality of individual cases, but more on that. So it plays a deterrent role going forward. Just to bring a little bit perspective from UN, although the broader UN system, UN is also part of the society. We are all part of the mix of society and nations. Increasingly, there has been concern about sexual harassment within the UN system. So the Secretary General of UN has come in extremely strongly on it, and bringing complete zero tolerance on sexual harassment. Anyone found to be exploiting is dismissed as far as that. And there have been many cases at the highest level of those actions being taken at different agency level. There are hotlines, phone lines, and etc. So clear mechanism. There are still problems, I would say. It's not is not free of this, but the mechanism has been put, and increasingly people have come forward. The reference of here favors. There are concern of these favors. The junior staff being exploited by senior, and these type of things. But the key issue is action from the top. That's fundamental. And various mechanisms put in place to report, for the victim to go and raise concern. And I want to say another point is, in the broad context of Sustainable Development Goals, what we are talking about, gender-based violence, promotion of gender, is one of the priority areas. And of course, if we cannot address, gender equality, and there is still a exploitation of sexual violence, etc., we cannot have TVSDT. This is over 50% of the population. Their rights, their concern, so it's really at the bottom of the overall development a nation has committed and embraced on. And so lastly, I want to say that really this is a great effort, a commendable steps, and in the United Nations system we are committed as a part of it, and we have great partners here. We are working together. So let's join hands and let us know what help we need to put on it, to put a stop on this at the institutions. At least at the institution level, I think we can show results quicker than a bigger level of society, because it's a closed circle. And as I hear from the representative from the University of Zimbabwe, Bindura, and others, there are steps already taken. And what alarms is this statistics of 74% of the students being a victim. I think that one is too many, and we really need to work on it. Thank you very much for this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, UN President Coordinator. And I think the message was clear in terms of partnership for deans. When we opened the plenary, the UN has confirmed that there is need for partnership towards eliminating and taking action. And action from the top. The message was very clear. Remember, our hashtag is hashtag Act Now, and I think the message was in sync with that. Let's just conclude our session on analyzing the status quo in universities by probably walking through what, and probably hearing what research is saying about the subject matter. So I will invite Madam Patricia, the UNESCO Regional HIV and AIDS and Health Education Advisor, to just walk us through what research is saying. And then immediately after that, we can then open the floor just to reflect. But to say we're going to reflect today, not to say what is the problem, but to pick what kind of partnerships can we do with universities, what can we do in terms of solutions, what are the action points, and what are the commitments. And I know our deans of students here have got that capacity to walk us through action points and commitments. Thank you. Help me welcome the regional HIV and Health Education Advisor.
Good morning. I was just asking if we all can see that. It seems a little bit faint. I'll just try to speak to my slides, and apologies if people can't see some of the data. Morning. So as introduced, my name is Patricia Mashawira, Regional Advisor for HIV and Health for UNESCO. My presentation is going to look at how can we make tertiary education institutions safer and healthier for students. So when I talk about higher and tertiary education institutions, the definition that I use extends beyond universities to teacher training colleges, polytechnics, and other technical institutions that we have in our countries. So basically anything post-basic education is covered in that definition of higher and tertiary education institutions. So I'll start by making a case that we really need to invest in higher and tertiary education institutions, because as we've heard, this is a currently underserved subpopulation. So typically, tertiary education institutions are viewed as sites for generating knowledge, but not sites for interventions. So when we think about universities, we think about institutions that are responsible for transmitting the accumulated body of knowledge, creating new knowledge, preserving new knowledge, and providing advisory, extension, and consultancy services on issues that are relevant to society. But rarely do we think of them as sites for interventions themselves. And yet we know, and we've heard this morning, that these institutions can be places where students feel unsafe with resulting negative health outcomes. We know that in tertiary education institutions, students benefit from very few public health interventions. They face significant sexual harassment. We just heard that this morning. They also fall within the age range 18 to 24 with significantly higher levels of new HIV infections. They're also prone to early and unintended pregnancies, and they face significant peer pressure and sexual harassment. So if left unguarded, I think these institutions can be places where sexual harassment by and against both learners and educators can thrive. I think the example from the students this morning showed us that. So why should we focus on this higher and tertiary education sector? In Africa has the fastest growing tertiary enrollment in the world, and this sector caters for sexually active young people, mostly in the 18 to 30 age range. We have a heterogeneous group of students from diverse socioeconomic status, and importantly, more and more, institutions are home to young people who were born with HIV, who are now in these institutions. Young people in tertiary institutions face real independence from parents, from teachers. For the first time, they are on their own without this supervision. So our argument is we've invested heavily through the support of partners such as Sweden and the European Union to support comprehensive sexuality education, sexual and reproductive health for primary and secondary education. So we can't focus on these secondary to high school students only to have them become vulnerable to HIV, sexual abuse and pregnancy right after that. We really need to focus on this critical transition beyond secondary and into the world of work. So when we do work on comprehensive sexuality education, sexual and reproductive health, with the younger age groups, there's so much opposition, there's so many sensitivities. But what we find is that with this older age group, there are less sensitivities. People are more comfortable to be talking about distributing condoms to university students. People are more comfortable to be talking about giving university students comprehensive sexuality education. So this is a sector where we can really do that work without much opposition, without the opposition that we face when we are talking to learners who are much younger. So in addition to sexual harassment, we know that tertiary students face a cocktail of other issues. I've talked about real independence from parents for the first time. There's a lot of sexual experimentation, sex for favors, we've just seen that, transactional sex, peer pressure comes in, sexual abuse. So it's a cocktail of issues coming together, confronting these young people. So what is the data telling us? So UNESCO commissioned, because there is also a challenge that there is not a lot of research that has been done in this sector. UNESCO in 2016 commissioned research, situation analysis on the status to better understand what is happening in tertiary institutions in a number of countries. So we had two separate studies. One was a case study of two countries, Zimbabwe and Tanzania. It's this publication, we also have it out there on the stand. Looking at, so the Zimbabwe study looked at University of Zimbabwe and Bindura University, and then Tanzania was the University of Dar es Salaam. And then in Malawi, we studied technical and vocational training institutions. You'll find that the data that came out is quite similar, but sexual harassment is more pronounced in the technical and vocational training institutions. Why? Because they are more male-dominated. I'll go into the data in more detail. Sorry, because I was given 15 minutes, I tried to pack the significant findings from all those studies, but we do have the studies available for those who want to probe further. So the case studies in Zimbabwe did stakeholder interviews. There was also an online survey with students and focus group discussions with students. Similarly, in Malawi, where we looked at Chongoni, Mzuzu, Blantyre, and Edza technical and vocational colleges. So I'll just give a snapshot of the findings. It was difficult to have a more comprehensive outlay within 15 minutes. One of the key findings of the study is that poverty is a key driver of risky sexual behavior amongst students. So in the online survey in Zimbabwe, only 3% of respondents had received a government loan, with another 7% having some kind of grant or scholarship. The majority of students were being supported by their families. In contrast, the online survey in Tanzania found that 75% of students were benefiting from government loans. So we've really heard about the issue of accommodation where students are not able to pay and they resort to semester marriages. In fact, that quote that we have there, which you can't read, is talking about the issue of semester marriages that you had students talking about. And then also another important finding was that the age of first intercourse is coinciding with university entry. So a lot of students start having sex when they first enter university, and particularly female students in first year are a very vulnerable subpopulation. And when we asked them, whether they used a condom the first time they had sex, we found that only 66% of the females said no, they did not use a condom. 47% of the males had not used a condom. So you have very high, sex, but in a context of low condom use, and particularly among females, first-year students, where they shared that if you're seen carrying condoms, people perceive that you are loose, so that they don't want to be found with condoms on them. And again, what the online survey found was that students, and this is Bindura University, students have a low perception of risk, with almost 50% of students at Bindura University saying they think they'll probably or definitely not get infected by HIV. But at the same time, we know that most new infections occur among the age group 20 to 24. With the research that we did, it was very difficult to get data on HIV incidence or prevalence in the universities. But the researchers used data from the population-wide studies, which shows that for that age group, that's where new infections start to rise with the 15 to 19 age group, but rapidly increase with the 20 to 24 age group. And this is the age group that we find in universities. And then in terms of gender-based violence, I think all studies in all the institutions showed that gender-based violence is rife at university, affecting both male and female students, though female students are more affected. Like I said in the beginning, the situation in Malawi was worse because the technical and vocational training institutions are more male-dominated. So these are the institutions that have, your carpentry, your bricklaying, your mechanical engineering, your motor mechanics, which are mostly frequented by males. And actually the girls in those institutions reported that they feel unsafe because it's a very male-dominated environment. You find very few females going there. And the parents in the surrounding communities were, as said, they feared sending their girl children to those colleges because of this environment. So the sexual and gender-based violence was much higher in those institutions. The online survey respondents showed that 18% of female respondents in Zimbabwe and 27% in Tanzania had been forced to have sex at least once. And the majority of the students responding to the survey, both in Zimbabwe and Tanzania, considered that their campuses were not safe environments for LGBTI students. So we've heard this morning colleagues talking about how they felt the impact of sexual harassment on students. We know sexual harassment is a human rights violation, and it can affect students who will have trouble studying or paying attention, poor academic performance, low self-esteem. I think you had young people talking about that this morning. I won't go into details. So UNESCO and partners developed in 2016 global guidance on addressing school-related gender-based violence, which I think can also be applied to tertiary institutions. And it really touches on what are the critical elements of a comprehensive response to gender-based violence, including looking at the leadership, the environment, the curriculum, evidence partnerships, working with the police and others to support a more supportive environment in and around the tertiary institution. I think my time is coming to an end. So I'll just conclude by saying that overall, what the studies found is that the initiative to address sexual and reproductive health and rights within these institutions, and this is broader than just looking at gender-based violence, are ad hoc, fragmented, and not embedded within an institutional framework, and they also lack a holistic approach. It's important to address the vectors of vulnerability, particularly the issue of lack of affordable accommodation was a big challenge for students in Zimbabwe. And then also the institutions are not offering SRH services or training on comprehensive sexuality education for first year or continuing students, and availability of condoms is either inconsistent or non-existent. Another interesting finding is that where health services are offered on campus, in many instances, students opt not to use the health services on campus because of confidentiality and other issues. They prefer to go somewhere else. And now when cost becomes an issue, that's where students end up not frequenting the services. And yet sometimes the services are available on campus. Students lack adequate SRH information. This was clear across all the countries, including around the risks of unintended pregnancy, induced abortions, which are common across all the universities and tertiary institutions, sexually transmitted infections, and HIV. Both students and staff members showed low levels of knowledge on gender-based violence and other SRH issues, which contributes to low risk perception and inconsistent health-seeking behaviors. There's also poor planning, coordination, implementation, and monitoring of interventions that are taking place in these institutions. So just picked a few recommendations. I think there are more recommendations in the report for those who are interested in looking at it. I just picked a few highlights. Ensuring students have access to safe and adequate accommodation, I think it's a big issue. Prioritizing students to receive on-campus accommodation during their first year may need to be considered. Access to government loans or grants where possible, and then greater understanding of the unique vulnerabilities and needs, particularly for female first-year students and other marginalized groups, is required to inform programming and service intervention design. Investigate preferred model of SRH service delivery that is aligned to the specific needs of students. Sometimes students were reporting that the service is open, but it's open during the time that they are in university, that they are in class, and asking for extended opening hours. I think if there is political will, some of these changes are easy changes that can easily be made without any additional financing. And the effective policy implementation and programmatic support is still required for students who experience sexual harassment or gender-based violence on college. So lastly, I think that's our vision for a young person, a young university student, in line with the ESSA commitment, looking at a young African, a global citizen who is empowered, educated, healthy, resilient, and socially responsible, an autonomous decision maker who has the capacity to reach their full potential and contribute to the development of their country and region. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think research is just confirming the stories of the students and the remarks from the previous speakers that the line that I just quote there, which is very important, is our students feel that our campuses are not safe. And then that means we have to be concerned. Whether we agree to a lesser degree or to a greater degree that there are some students who feel that our campuses are not safe, and these are the spaces that are supposed to develop the future of our countries as Southern Africa. It's important to begin to ask what can we do differently, instead of questioning whether decide if it is true or not. So I'll open the plenary now to reflect on the research, but I'll probably encourage you just to not dwell much on the methodology, the percentages, but what can be done. Because this is a solution-focused dialogue, and after this short plenary, we'll be moving through to our panel again to concretize on the solutions, and we'll be having the ambassador, Her Excellence, Madame Sophia, and also the ambassador of Canada, His Excellency Rene, and a UNFPA representative, a student from the University of Zimbabwe, Dr. Mercado from the University of Science Education, a partner with great experience of working with women and girls, Executive Director Netim Sani from SASA Project. They will be coming through just to help us concretize the solutions. So I'll open the plenary for about 7 to 10 minutes so that you get to talk to me. You can just click from wherever you are. My colleagues here will help me. I'm visually impaired. I don't want to skip anyone. I know the research did not touch on sexual harassment for students with disabilities. It's also another gray area that I think maybe research should consider. All right. Can I have the roving mic? Any reflections on the research? You can click, yes, you can click so that I can see because I'm visually impaired.
Okay. Right. In terms of solutions, allow me to pick it from my personal observations. One of the observations I've made is that most of our staff, especially in universities, lecturers, lack professional training. We become lecturers by virtue of being good researchers. We don't undergo any professional training. Whoever has got good grades as a student normally become a graduate teaching assistant, a research assistant, a teaching assistant, and then they become lecturers. So issues of professional ethics, it is zero. There are so many gaps that we find when we have conversations on issues to do with social molding, life skills development, even among members of staff. And the whole discourse on sexual harassment, you also realize that some lecturers have a few deficiencies in terms of information on what constitutes sexual harassment and what constitutes offenses. So my first suggestion would be, if universities would do more in terms of professional development for our staff. And then the other suggestion that I also want to provide for universities and tertiary institutions is coming up with student advisory systems or systems and mechanisms for student advisory. In most cases, as academic institutions, we provide academic advisory, but we don't do social advisory. What we may need is to raise, mentors in the context of our faculties who work with students from their first semester in year 1 through their studies, providing mentorship, providing guidance and leadership. Most especially if we could do it, say, male lecturers, mentoring male students, and female lecturers mentoring female students, to also avoid, opportunities for further compromise or harassment. And then the other thing, sorry, I'm taking a bit of time. The other thing is also taking dialogue, this kind of dialogue, taking it to the micro level. What I've tended to see, us doing, most especially in tertiary institutions, having conversations of this nature. Very few students, deans, and our sponsors, but really never coming to a place where we take the conversations to the perpetrators, to the lecturers. Having a conversation of this nature, what is sexual harassment, how do we avert sexual harassment, engaging each other, at lecturer level, and also taking the conversation to the macro level, where we, the research findings that were presented just now, they are taken to our vice chancellors. We have conversations with vice chancellors, and vice chancellors are also made to commit. Principals are made to commit. Because the problem is, if we end this conversation at this level, the meso level and the macro level may just, miss it. And I also want to, finally agree with Ambassador Parajuli, naming and shaming. Many times, yes, we find or get the perpetrators. They go through disciplinary systems, and people are fired from work, but the information is not disseminated to the public. If we name and shame, that can actually become a huge deterrent. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dean Madam. I think you are the only one that are allowed to have the liberty of talking for a long time like that, because you are hosting us. Otherwise, we will be chased out. But all other contributors, just keep it to 1 minute. But I like his ending part. Naming and shaming. Let's not keep the reputation and throw away the dignity of our young people. That's very important. That's the action that we want. Deans of students on the spotlight, please don't keep the reputation and throw away the dignity of our young people. All right, second speaker, yes.
Thank you. My name is coming out?
Can you switch off?
Yes. Hello. Yeah, my name is Naomi Wekwete. I'm from the University of Zimbabwe, and I work with students. We have a sexual and reproductive health project, which is a regional one, which involves several universities within the SADC region, including WITS and UCT, Namibia, Botswana, and Eduardo Mondlane. We do action research. We started in 2011, Dr. Madambi knows that. And we actually had a research in 2011 to find out exactly what was happening here at the University of Zimbabwe. And like Mrs. Machawera, when you said talk about lack of accommodation, it was identified as one of the most important issues that have to be addressed. That time, University of Zimbabwe, no one was staying in rest. Remember, all halls of residence had been closed. So after having that research, it was they were the students who did the research, not me. It was the students. And after presenting having found the results, the findings, we took them to the Vice Chancellor, and the Vice Chancellor referred us to Professor Granda, was the PVC that time. And I think he gave the Professor Granda, because she was female, and she was so receptive, and also said she was also very, she found it very upset for her to have students also facing such a challenge, and because they were facing so many sexual abuses, not just from the lecturers, but even from the staff, even the workers. When they move across the corridors, the workers would pass on comments. Okay, maybe I can just conclude and say that one of the recommendations was to make sure they open the universities, and by September 2011, the halls of residence were opened. We have a publication on that. If anyone needs that, I can give you. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Dr. Wekwete. Maybe just one contribution, so that it doesn't become a UZ affair. From a dean of students, a solution perspective, preferably. Yeah, thank you, Dean.
Thank you. I like the 6th point from the UN representative, and I think we want to follow up on that. Patricia, is that not the Harmani presentation at Nyanga? It was presented to the VCs.
Yep.
But our reaction, if I remember with the deans, is that let's have a survey of hot points. Where does unsafe sex come from? On campus, what are the hot points? Once we do that, we take up that and empower those responsible in those hot points. Issues of counseling, issues of outsourcing, issues of which you have done, UN, with teachers' colleges, polytechnics, through government, Matipano office. Musasa project, you went through with the universities on a document which is still hanging. And we want that document which you did with the Matipano office, Ministry of Higher and Tertiary Education, Science and Development. You need to implement that project. It's there on your desk. We have the booklets. We can revive that. Let us empower it at grassroots level so that when issues occur, they are taken up like they do at teachers' college at polytechnic level. The autonomy in the universities tends to erode the effectiveness of the programs. So we need really to look at it, and I suggested that the deans come up with their hotspots. Meet, for example, sports. For example, the clinic itself. For all those must come in and they are trained, they are empowered to handle the outcomes. Academic board, Dr. Madambi, we have mentioned, academic board should strike marks that are inconsistent. High flyers who are no longer high flyers. High flyers that have flunked in other departments. A lecturer whose marks are very dodgy, need to be tracked. In my own university, any failure is tracked.
Thank you. Thank you, Dinisha Nauka from the Harare Institute of Technology. Now, as our panelist is preparing, we can probably hear the voice of those who are in this situation. Just one student. I'll allow this one student. Now,
thank you. My name is Matthew Tayengo from China University of Technology. I'm the president for the PhD Kingdom. I just want to maybe mention a gap that I've just identified, that most of the programs are not reaching out to students who are living off campus. It is with great regret that the university cannot accommodate all the students. They cannot provide the accommodation for all the students, but those who are living off campus, we also need to program our program so that we reach out to them. Then another issue is on intimidation and retaliation. After the students have reported their cases of sexual harassment, we end up seeing them withdrawing. We want to know what is happening behind the scenes. Why the student is withdrawn? Does the lecturer went on behind the scenes and maybe convince the student or pay or did something which is not legally binding? And at the end of the day, our results are compromised and our campaigns are not as effective as they are supposed to be. There is no naming and shaming because the students are withdrawing. What are we going to do? And another thing is the judicial system should come and intervene to universities. They should come themselves and present to the students and to the lecturers what they mean. What are the perpetrators are going to be dealt with? What are the measures they are going to take to deal with the perpetrators of sexual harassment in universities? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Matthew. Let's give a round of applause for the students for being courageous to speak out. It's so easy to speak in the presence of your deans, your professors, and high-level people. I will just probably close this session. Having the director of CASET, Talent Shumo.
Thank you very much.
In a minute, yes?
Yes, in a minute. My name is Talent. I'm from CATSO Sisterhood. And one area that as CATSO we're really interested in is the whole issue of revenge pornography, because we've been receiving a lot of reports from female students, also read in the papers, a lot of incidences of revenge pornography, non-consensual distribution of sexually explicit material, which happens on campus. Most of the recordings are actually done without the knowledge or consent of the person. And I think when we talk about violence on campus, we should definitely be looking at revenge pornography. The issue of mental health, cases of students who are committing suicide as a result of the violence. I think those things need to be looked into so that as we look at solutions, we're also taking those into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Talent. I think the messages have been clear. From underlying causes of sexual harassment, accommodation, it has been touched, to retribution. Students, after reporting, they face some kind of persecution from the perpetrators. I think it questions the whole system to say, are students really safe? Okay, I will open again the plenary after our panelists have probably helped us to walk through the asks and the solutions. Remember, this dialogue is a solution-focused dialogue. #action now. So, allow me, ladies and gentlemen, to close this plenary because of our time. Not to say that your issues are not important. And allow me to invite to the stage our first panelist, Her Excellency, the Ambassador of Sweden, Sofia Kaltop, to come through. Can you please give a round of applause? Thank you so much, Your Excellency. Allow me also to invite Ambassador of Canada, René Cromones, to come through. Can we? Thank you so much, His Excellency. Allow me to invite a representative from the UNFPA to join our panelists. Let's give them a hand of applause. We're getting tired. We're not eating the solutions, but we're getting tired of it. Allow me to invite the director of the MSASA project. She had already received a question from you, Dincha Rauga. She will use this space to probably respond and direct to our solutions. Netim Sani, thank you. Let's give a round of applause. Allow me to invite Dr. Dean Makado from the Bindura University of Science Education in Bindura. And then we have got the owners of the issue and equally the owners of the solution, the students. Allow me to invite Vanessa Amidu from the University of Zimbabwe. I think the applause should be louder for Vanessa Amidu. Right, thank you so much. So, the structure for our panel presentation is we are going to have to hear the students. Thank you. Those are some of the benefits of being visually impaired. You can be in wrong places and you can be forgiven for that. I'm in the right place now. So the structure for our panel now is this is the fulcrum, the peak of the issue. Because we're now telling from we've heard what research has said, we have heard the stories from the students. Now we are going to start with the students giving us their ask. And I think for our deans, this is the most important part, to say what is the ask from the students. We have our partners. We are probably going to hear from them. How do they view, how do they contextualize the ask from the students into the work that they are doing, using the influence that they have and the priorities that they have towards eliminating sexual harassment in our universities. So I will start with Vanessa Amidu. I'll give you 2 minutes to present us with the asks. Vanessa.
Thank you so much, sir. So when it comes to students, we should note that what students particularly want is an environment where they feel safe, where they are obliged that if they give out their plea or their cry, then they are not going to be victimized or have follow-ups or feel like they're no longer safe on campus. So most of the times, we have to understand that sexual harassment is something that is happening. So the key ask I'm going to look at right now is key ask number 4. I'll look at the last one. Why? Because it involves all students at most. So universities, as one of my colleagues says, universities cannot accommodate all students. So at the end of the day, we have more concentration being focused on the students who are on campus, and then those who are off campus, they're the ones who oblige and who end up in semester marriages and so on, because they cannot afford to pay for their accommodation, or they basically choose to live with their boyfriends. So most of the times you'd realize that even students who are off campus and on attachment, when they face sexual harassment on attachment, they do not know who exactly to report to. Even if they do and they decide to inform external forces such as the police, they feel safer if they report close to home, which is their universities. So universities should have policies for students on attachment, that when they bring cases of sexual harassment, how does the university go about that case and make sure that the student is not victimized, whether they're a girl or they're a boy, depending on the sexual harassment that they're facing. And because sexual harassment has different stages, when it starts from even a comment, it goes towards describing someone's body to the extent of touching. So we need to be clear on that, because students, when they do not know what is sexual harassment, they'll basically do anything for favors, especially in this economic situation where they are forced to particularly involve themselves in carpet interviews, in taking unnecessary flirting comments from the professional level, and even when they are on campus. So that one is really a cause for concern. Thank you.
Thank you, Vanessa. All right, I'll then move. I'll probably start to put on the spotlight the Swedish ambassador, Sofia Kaltop. Just also to acknowledge that I'll start with her, because the Embassy of Sweden is the one funding this particular event. And I know they've put a lot of resources, both technical and financial, in pushing for women's rights in Zimbabwe. And Sweden is one of the countries that is regarded as very progressive in terms of ensuring women's rights are protected, promoted, and respected at all levels. Just to say, after hearing the asks of the students, the stories of the students, what probably can be the learning points between the Embassy of Sweden and Sweden as a country, some kind of partnership where we can borrow or learn from your experience programming in Zimbabwe, and also how Zimbabwean Institute of Higher Learning can learn from Institute of Higher Learning in Sweden. Thank you.
Thank you very much. But thank you very much for I mean, from as you said, the Swedish Embassy in Sweden is very much engaged in those issues, but I would very much like to thank the students and the university and the dean for hosting us today, and I definitely think that the first step is, of course, to talk about those issues and to speak out and to denounce unacceptable behavior. And hearing from Bisho some of the numbers of the situation when it comes to sexual harassment in universities in Zimbabwe, it's definitely an issue that needs to be addressed, and that if we as Sweden can be helpful, I definitely will do my utmost to help out as much as I can. As we mentioned, we are working with Say What in order to raise the issue and to encourage people to speak out. But I think what's also been mentioning in terms of clear policies and places to report in order to make sure that the students that are harassed both feel comfortable in speaking out about the issue, but also that there is an accessibility of services, that there are points of entry within the universities for students living at campus, but also, as we heard, the issue of students who are not living on campus, that there is this, that every student should know where they can turn to. I think that is possibly a lesson from the universities in Sweden, that every student should feel that they have the right to report, but also they should know where to go in order to report. That's very much the starting point. And I would like to again thank the the students and the accounts that we have heard about the situation that I have to say is quite deplorable, and let's see how we can together address it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Let's give a round of applause for the ambassador. Thank you so much. I think the message is clear to say the process of talking about sexual harassment has started, but it doesn't stop with talk. It has to move to action. It has to move to accruing to benefits in ensuring that our male and female students are safe on and off campus. Teams of students take notes. I think there's a great possibility of partnerships. I'll open the floor. I'll move on to the Ambassador of Canada, His Excellency Rene Cromones, just to give us perspectives. And know you have been active in terms of the He for She campaign, the role of men in terms of working with women, working with girls, working with female students in challenging sexual harassment, gender-based violence. What are the opportunities? After hearing the asks, after hearing the stories of the students, what are the opportunities probably for partnership involving men in the broader fight against gender-based violence? And thank you.
Thank you very much for having me, and thank you to the students and Katsue, Sewat, the other organization, and to the Swedish Embassy for organizing this today. One thing I think is important to start with is to note that as I sit up here representing a country, it's not to say that Canada has found a solution to the problem or that this is somehow a uniquely African or Zimbabwean problem. Canada may be a place where, as in Sweden, some of these mechanisms and the policies are in place, but we still struggle with some of the things that the students raised themselves or that Bishop talked about. And social norms is one of them. I still find that the kinds of things that were being reflected here in terms of what boys understand about girls and sexual reproductive health rights is very low, and it tends to feed into what one of the student representatives talked about, is people becoming perpetrators because they believe a man is supposed to behave in a particular way. And that's something that I think as a solution needs to get tackled here in Canada and elsewhere. You need to understand what it means to be a man, and not in a traditional sense that it seems that the more number of women you can have sex with doesn't make you a better man. The more number of people you can have power over or influence over doesn't make you a better man. These are norms that we have to fight, and I find them here in Zimbabwe, but they also exist in Canada. And as a man and as a He for She champion, I myself, Vishal mentioned it as well, I think having those conversations with men and making sure that the young men understand that being empathetic and being able to understand what women are going through and being able to stand up for them actually makes them better men, makes them actually stronger, and as a sense of masculinity that is important for them to take in for their lives in university, and then when they take it out into their communities, because their communities will be better, their marriages will be better, their families will be better, the societies will be stronger if they adopt that view of the relationship with women and support women going forward.
Thank you, Ambassador, for clearly articulating the possibilities of working with men. I think it's a shared responsibility. Gender-based violence, sexual harassment is not a women's issue. It is a community issue. It is our issue as Zimbabweans, all of us, men and women. Permit us also to acknowledge the presence of, because I'm a man campaign, now that the ambassador has talked about he or she and him being a champion as well, I would like to acknowledge the presence of, say, Nigel, Chinakira, and Conrad. Maybe we can just stand up from where you are. We want to see more men like him that will be coming through just to help us in terms of the way forward. Thank you so much. I will probably go to my next presenter will be from UNFPA. We know that there is a big program, the Spotlight. Some of you have already heard about it. It's a big program being rolled out in Zimbabwe in terms of responding to eliminating gender-based violence, including sexual harassment, and pushing for women's rights. We have the university stories now. You have heard it. Where are the opportunities?
Thank you very much. Good morning, good afternoon, good morning, everybody. Mangwanani. Thank you very much for inviting us to be part of this. And we've always been part of young people. And we really appreciate the efforts by the donors like Sweden, Canada, Irish Aid, who have been helping us to work with you as students and as in educational institutions. I'll just not jump into it immediately on spotlights, but I think what we've heard this morning is a reality. I don't think it was just a skit, it was what is happening. And the figures that we saw UNESCO presenting are not fictitious, they're real figures. And it's a big, big problem. And it is for this reason, as a UN, we're looking at how can we ensure that we help institutions, we help governments invest more in this group of young people. When you come to university, you're somewhere halfway between being a child and being an adult. And it's a phase that we go through, all of us, and it's a scaring phase because you're expected to act like an adult, but at the same time you're dependent like a child on other people. And that brings me to the part of where is Spotlight putting the spotlight? We are putting the spotlight on gender-based violence, which includes sexual exploitation and abuse, and sexual and reproductive health and rights. Because when we go through what some people tell us, you realize that it's really violating their rights. And it is for this reason, Spotlight is not a new project. It is building on what all the different UN agencies are doing. And that's why we build on information like what Patricia presented. We use information to work with appropriate target groups who include the universities and tertiary education institutions. And it is for this reason that what's really coming out from the ask is, who are you asking? We are asking, one, you come in, you are in the custody of the university. And therefore the university as a whole, the administration, starting from the highest level, has a big responsibility. Because as a tertiary institution, you are telling parents or guardians, we are taking custody of your children to help them become responsible adults. Therefore, all the stories we are hearing about semerst husbands, I had never heard about it. I think it's the first time I've had a name given to it. It doesn't happen just in Zimbabwe. It's happening all over. We as a UN, as part of prevention of sexual exploitation, abuse and gender-based violence, are going to work with various partners, especially the tertiary institutions, now that you pointed out, to look at how can we work upstream at the policy level, to look at can we then work with the tertiary institution administration to make sure that there are favorable policies that allow an environment that ensures the protection of both girls and boys while in their learning institutions. I think that's one area. Two, as part of programming, is to look at how to work with the students. So there's responsibility of the administration, but there's also responsibility of the students, and looking at how best can we better prepare students. You know, if you want a car to run well, you have to make sure it's in good condition all the time. And if we want young people to be productive, we have to make sure they are in good condition, physically, mentally, and emotionally. and therefore looking at what programs are going on and how best to build on them from lessons learned, both from here and other countries, because you realize the studies are covering other countries in the region. A very simple example, talking about off-campus responsibility. The university administration is like, that's not my business. Where they stay is their business. Whereas I know in some countries in Africa, I'm not talking about Europe or the US, in Africa what they have done is ensure there's outside accommodation but supervised outside off-campus accommodation, where the university is actually responsible for what's going on. So they are off-campus, but they're still sort of monitored. So we need to look at models of what other people are doing and come in with innovations that will suit Zimbabwe. Finally, I think the other part the Spotlight is touching on, we've mentioned about data. Patricia gave you an example of how we are going to use data and information to continue to enhance and scale up our work with you. The other part that's very critical is service delivery. Somebody said something about the university clinic is only open between 8 to 4 p.m. and yet maybe that's the time, not maybe, but that's the time you're in class. So there are simple things that need no financial resources, that just need us to sit down, and as a UN we are ready and we will come forward and see how we can work with administration, the students, and the final part which was mentioned, the third prong, is the family. And this is where we look at how do we bridge between the community and the society that our students are coming from, the homes that they will go back to, and the university administration. So the relationship between the communities and the students, more so at family level, looking at parent-child communication, how this can be strengthened to address. So it may not be we will answer all that you ask, but through Spotlight, the wider UN, we all have come in with different knowledge and skills. We will come in and work together with administration and the students. Sorry, I was too long.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I think the message here, the Spotlight also is being cast on universities and institutions of higher learning. Thank you for that. The UN family is ready to come and partner and support. We are now we're now going to have Musasa Project, the Executive Director, just probably to give us possibilities of partnership in terms of external support for survivors. And I think that's an important area where there was a recommendation that there should be internal and external processes. What can be the possible opportunities for partnership for survivors of sexual harassment to be supported outside by partners here in Zimbabwe? Just in 2 minutes, Nettie.
Thank you. Yes, Musasa provides direct services to survivors, and we are ready to do that. We have shelters across the country. We also have 24-hour, unlike the university clinic. We have a 24-hour call line that students can utilize. We also provide psychosocial support, but I want to say critically, Musasa can provide a voice to students. I know there are times when they are afraid, they do not know where to turn to, they are not aware of their rights. Musasa is there to provide that, and critically to provide the voice when students are fearful to hold their universities and their lecturers to account. But I also wanted to say Musasa can also provide an outlet for naming and shaming. We are not afraid of them. There are men that were violating students, even as some of us were in this institution, and they're higher up there because no one brought them to account. We know them, they are holding positions of power, and the question is always, why are universities protecting some of these men? Because even those that are in leadership are also not clean. And so as Musasa, we will not be afraid to name and shame and to provide a voice to students. But I think critically also it is about lobbying for not just having the laws in place, but ensuring that those laws are implemented. As a country, we are very good at putting in legislation. When people make noise, you get the law. But it's not resourced, it's not implemented, and I'm surprised we are still talking about universities not having policies. And the question is, who's benefiting from not having those policies? It is the men in universities, it is the men holding positions of power in universities who can simply actually have that law, but are not doing so because they do not want to be held accountable. So issues of accountability from students right up to the highest level of tertiary institutions is something that also as Musasa we can take up. We provide, like I said, the direct services, but we can also facilitate creating of safe spaces for students to be able to talk about their stories. I remember the first time I went to the university clinic and I had a thrush. And the first question I was asked, who did you sleep with? How many men did you sleep with? Have they been treated? It was my first time to go to that clinic as a university student. Those spaces are not safe for students. And a lot of them are manned by old women who do not understand young women's issues. And I think we need to change, to make them safe for young people to use them. So I think there are young nurses around, there are young counselors around. Why do we still have old women who only think when you have a thrush, you have slept with a man? I think we need a change even in our staffing to make them safe, to make, you can open them for 24 hours. As long as we have those women and those men in those positions, they will not come. So we need to have people that are friendly, that understand the new dynamics that are there to be manning some of those services, and we can support in terms of that. And finally, we need to document women's stories. We need to document young people's stories with sexual violence. Because for us to facilitate advocacy, we need to actually know what's happening. Let's break the culture of fear. Let's break the culture of stigma, because a lot of times you're actually blamed for what happens to you. And when we give space for talking, give space for documenting those stories, it's easier for us to facilitate advocacy. And indeed, as Musasa, we are on standby to provide a voice. And critically, just as I conclude the issue that was raised, indeed we did a research, and there were critical recommendations in that research, which we still have as Musasa, that we are prepared to take up. I think things just changed a bit, but there were indeed critical recommendations for working with all the tertiary institutions in Zimbabwe, and we can follow that through. Thank you.
Thank you, Leslie. Yeah, documenting the stories of young people, it's very important. Young people say anything for us without us is against us. That's their mantra. And I could hear from the ululation and jubilation when there was talk of old women. I don't want to make anyone unemployed. But yeah, we still have space, and the solution is we want the rightful skills of youth friendliness to be there in all the spaces so that our young people are safe. All right, my last panelist for today, and then audience, please get ready. Opening now, especially our deans. We have heard from our panelists. I will have one of your own, Dr. Dean Makado, just share perspectives from a solution kind of route. How best do we move forward as universities? I would prefer it, Dr. Makado, if you don't go to the narrative of what's wrong, but just go straight to the page that reads solutions and way forward for universities.
Thank you.
Just probably in about 2-3 minutes. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you, Sendisa. I want to thank Sewat for giving us this privilege. Yes, I don't know whether I will fit this in 2 minutes. Because I've been in this job for 22 years.
Okay, Professor.
I was reflecting when issues of policies were being cited, the importance of policies. Yes, it is important to have policies. But I was also reflecting that we have laws, and yet the jails are still bursting with criminals. So we need to go beyond policies. Yes, policies, and most universities now have sexual harassment policies, and but the sexual harassment is still going on. So you begin to wonder what is happening. I was listening closely to the research findings of UNESCO, because the university which was started, one of the universities which was started was mine, Pindura University. So I was saying, okay, although I didn't remember when they undertook this research. Yes. Now, one aspect which we need to emphasize is the issue of values. Because values guide our behavior. Yes, we can have policies, but still people will still behave in funny ways. There are 3 levels of discipline. There's what we call compliance. Compliance, you do something good because you fear people, but once you are away from people, you go back to your old behavior. That's not good enough. The next level is what we call identification. Identification, you behave according to the people you admire, like peers. But the danger at this level is you can follow those who are those who are directionless, those who don't have direction. The highest level of discipline is what we call rationalization, where somebody does something out of the full conviction that that is the right thing to do. If we can have that right level of understanding in our students and in our members of staff, we will have no cases, such rampant cases of sexual harassment. So I want to echo what my colleague said, that we need to intensify education, especially to our members of staff who may not have training in social issues, ethical issues. You have an engineer who is just appointed because of the knowledge of engineering, or he has worked with stones as a metallurgist, but he is not, he's not guided by ethical values in his conduct with students. So again, we need to address that aspect. Some professional grooming to our members of staff in universities. Some universities have it, basic course in teaching in universities. Then, secondly, we need to be innovative in the way we look at the issues of sexual harassment. Yes, as I've said, policies are there, but we still have people perpetrating sexual harassment. One of the innovative approaches is engagement, of wider engagement. Thinking without the box, as some poets have said. Not thinking, if you think with the box, outside the box, you assume the box is there. So, like at Bindura University, we have seen it working very well. We have engaged the parents. You know, when we talk about parents in university, some will say, no, you are saying, are you in high school? But what is happening is that the ages of students coming into university, they're getting younger and younger, 19 to 22. And some of them are not prepared to respond to the psychosocial pressures which arise in universities. So we need an engagement, and it has worked. When you see that the parents have their expectations, and they also partner in ensuring that issues of morality are addressed in their children, in their sons and daughters, it works. And we also, the issue of cascading, especially counseling skills. You have heard that the majority of our students are non-resident. In fact, Bindura, it's not only Bindura, we visited Howard University in the States. Most of them, such universities like NAST, we don't have many beds on campus. We depend on non-residential accommodation, where our students are exposed to the vices of society, vices of community. That's where the posters are, the drug posters, and there are people with all sorts of behaviors out there. We need to empower our homeowners, the landlords, with some counseling skills, so that we know we rest in the comfort of the knowledge that our students are in the hands of people who are acting in local parentis. Of course, the students have an obligation. No, we should not assume that they are just young people. They are growing into adulthood. So they also need to have a part, to play a part, being assertive, being confident on what they want, again reaching that level of rationalization. I know St. Lisa is about to say, you are preaching, but it is important, and also to empower our homeowners with basic counseling skills, psychosocial skills. And also somebody cited that these non-residential accommodation facilities need to be monitored. Yes, it is true. From my experience, I'm happy many of our universities have now instituted that strategy where they have employed people who monitor what is happening in boarding houses outside the university campuses. It pays because you discover a lot of things. And also students have a reporting point, like one of the excellencies have cited, that they need to know where to report or where to put across their issues. It helps where you get some people monitoring, officers monitoring what happens to our students outside campus. We have such a strategy. I know Chino University of Technology, I know MSU, and us, we have appointed people who monitor what happens to students outside campus. But in short, Lisa, it is important to be multifaceted, other than policies. We can have policies, but we'll still have perpetrators. People need to be guided by values, and there's need for more education on what constitutes sexual harassment. I rest my case.
Thank you, Dr. Makado, for raising your case on a very good note. So that's fine. I'm going to open just for a few minutes, and the 1 minute rule will apply again. I want to put our deans on the spotlight, preferably those who have not spoken before. Dean Makado gave us a clear recommendation. Let's go beyond policy, beyond ordinances, beyond the rules and regulations to renew action. Hashtag act now. Can I have the microphone? Just please, in a minute. Solution. Or solution focused question to any of the panelists.
Thank you. I'm Miss Sarapina Mdaranu, Dean of Students, Zimbabwean University. I just want to add on what Dr. Makado was saying. I will concentrate my contribution on two issues, that is off-campus life and also the issue of students on attachment. For students on attachment, what we have done as an institution is before our students leave campus for their 3-1, we give them an orientation where my department is the Division of Student Affairs. We talk to students on issues to do with life skills, and also we try to make sure that they know that if they face challenges out there, we are still there for them. We have also requested to accompany lecturers and even the Department of Work-Related Learning when they go out for assessments, so that as they do their work-related assessments, we also engage our students on any other issues, social issues that are affecting them while they are on their work-related learning. We've also opened lines of communication where we talk with our students while they are on attachment, and that has helped. We have had to solve a number of issues out there. And on off-campus, yes, there is no university that can accommodate all students on campus. And even if we have residences that can accommodate 15,000 students, still our students, not all of them would want to be accommodated on campus. So we've put in place structures where we have counseling that goes on in those boarding houses. We, from my institution, I have requested that the counselors, we do have counseling and advisory services, and the HIV, AIDS and life skills offices, they should come up with a work plan indicating what is it that they are going to be doing with students who live off campus. We have also appointed off-campus sub-wardens, whereby students talk peer-to-peer, and that we have also established a good relationship with the landlords, and we've come up with a committee. So that committee is assisting us. Everything that goes on off campus, we get to know and we act. The most important thing is to act. On sexual harassment, lastly, I think the main challenge, especially with male lecturers and even non-lecturers, they tend to protect each other. If a student goes to the dean of a faculty and reports a case of sexual harassment, and the perpetrator happens to be a friend to the dean, then that case, if we don't get to know about it, we will never get to know about it. So there's the issue of protecting each other.
Thank you so much, Dean. And the solution is we have received one, name and shame. We've got partners who are willing to do that. And we should be all part of that solution. All right, we do not monopolize our excellencies. They also have other people who want to probably benefit from their technical and experience and expertise. So we're going to play around a bit with the program. So that while they're still around, we do one of the most important things, which is part of this process, this dialogue, which is to commit to act. And probably I'll accuse my panelists in have our seats. Thank you so much. Let's give them a round of applause. All right, so I want to invite SlyMedia entrepreneur and Conrad Manawashe, who is a media practitioner. They are part of the Because I'm a Man campaign, also being supported by the Swedish Embassy. And many of our partners have worked with these men. We've seen and looked at them as well in other spaces. But as they are coming through up front, I will just allow one person, one voice that I think is important, which brings students and the parliament. We have Honorable Chido, the chairperson of the Parliamentary Portfolio Committee on Gender. Honorable, just in a minute, your solution. Remember, this is a solution-focused dialogue. Hashtag act now. Honorable Chido, in a minute.
Thank you very much for recognizing me. I think it has been a very enlightening dialogue, especially for me as a member of parliament, as people who are going to be making laws that will protect our women and girls. All I can say is, when we look at tertiary institutions, we tend to think that we are dealing with old people, very, very educated young women and girls. Even the lecturers, they are people of high intellectual capacity. So you tend to think they know what they are doing. But as Parliament, I'm happy to say, as we craft our laws, let me say we are going to be engaging the tertiary institutions, the students themselves, so that they become part of the solution to our laws. I'm happy that very soon we are going on public hearings on the marriage and child marriages bill, which has a lot to do with these issues that we are discussing here. And I promise to engage, to have public hearings in tertiary institutions so that they also become part and parcel of the solutions to the problems that we are discussing here. So to all stakeholders that are here, let's make sure that as we go for the public hearings, we go to the universities, we go to the polytechnics, so that the children themselves, we are talking of naming and shaming, they should also come with the solution of those perpetrators. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Honorable. I think you've just proved that you've been in Parliament for long, because you took just exactly 1 minute. Thank you. Let's give hands for Honorable. The Parliament is committed. Hashtag now. You can throw that on hashtag. So, because I'm a man, they're going to lead us in making our commitments and the pledges, but I'll allow them in 10 seconds so that you understand how the Because I'm a Man campaign works. So they'll just say their name, and then, because I'm a man, they finish the statement. Okay? So that's how the campaign runs. So I'll allow Niger first. Don't go speeches, Niger. Just your name. And then because I'm a man, you commit. And then you also allow Conrad to do the same. And then you lead our delegation, starting with our excellencies, then followed by our deans, then our representatives from parliament, our CSOs, our students. We just go through their committee.
I can't remember all of that. My name is Nigel Mugamu. Some people call me Senige. I run a company with my team called 260 Chat. I've been involved in this campaign because it's the right thing to do, first and foremost, but also because I'm a dad. I'm a dad to a 5-year-old daughter. I want to be the kind of father who then says I was involved in a campaign like this when she gets older. So obviously I've supported this campaign from the very beginning. I'm very proud of the work that I do with my brother here. You know, I think the campaign is ongoing, but we always seem to get roped in these things, and we always pitch up when we're asked to do so. And so here we are. Obviously, we're going to pledge to obviously commit ending or working to addressing sexual harassment. I've learned a lot of things today. Sorry, I'm not taking too long. Learned a couple of terms. Apply for a mark is one. Semester marriage is another, but this is all speaking to the issues that are actually taking place in society, and of course we need to act now. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nigel. My name is Conrad Manawashe. I am a journalist, producer and presenter at Capital 100.4 FM. I'm also an artist. I'm an actor, television and film actor. So I'm in this campaign because I'm a man. I've got 3 daughters, and one of them is already in university. So the issues that have been flagged here really apply to me, and I want really to be the voice for the girls, the voice for the young boys in universities and in colleges. I believe that these want a safe world, a safe society where they leave home and go to college and go to school and go to university to acquire knowledge, not to simply get married, especially under very difficult circumstances where somebody takes advantage of them. I don't want to be part of those kinds of men. I believe myself and Nigel and many other men under the He for She campaign, the ambassadors, we believe that it is our role to be the solution towards ending sexual harassment and any other form of violence. And probably I would like lastly to just say, I urge government and I plead with government to end violence and to end poverty in our societies, so that at least our children are not exposed because they have no other solution. Let's end poverty so that we can end sexual violence and any other forms of violence. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So we'll rearrange a bit again the structure so that let's just have our excellencies being led by our main champion to pledge, and then we are going to have a chance ourselves afterwards, so that we are probably in time and we allow them to attend to other business. So just lead our excellencies to the pledge board, because I'm the main champions. You sign first. Our excellencies, they commit as well. Let's keep our hands. They set up a commit.
All it's going to show is that I have poor penmanship.
So the chairperson of the Deans Forum, Dr. Makano, again also on behalf of the Deans represent, and then Vanessa Amidu conclude the ask, is a Web for Life member and represent. Yeah, you are allowed to take photos so that the conversation can go beyond the investors. Okay, thank you. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. So one of the key lessons we must learn if we are going to be dealing with sexual harassment is to be flexible and not to be stuck in our old ways. So we're going to change the program a bit. We're going to have remarks, not closing remarks. We're now going to have remarks from Her Excellency, the Ambassador of Sweden, Sofia Kalto. She's not closing, but she just wants to give remarks. And then we open the plenary and we have a parting shot from our country sisterhood. I will invite, can we put our hands together for Her Excellency?
Thank you very much. You have already heard me speak, so I'm not going to speak long, but I would like to raise two issues, also following what we have heard during the panel. One is the importance of respecting the rights of young people of Zimbabwe. You know, we all have, according to the Constitution, a number of rights, and I think the right of your own sexuality, the right of sexual education, and the rights of reproductive health and education in order to make sure that you as young people are respected. We heard the need, I mean, we heard the importance of values, but I also think we need to respect the rights of all of you to speak out and to be the ones you are, and to get the right to the services that you all need. And also that we heard from Nati, from Asasa, there are a number of institutions that you can reach out to, and I would like to pledge again as Swedish ambassador that we will continue to support those institutions and those initiatives. One lesson that we have learned from Sweden is that when you start to talk about an issue that has not been talked about before, when you start to report cases of sexual violence, the numbers actually go up. And I, of course, would not like to say that that's a good thing, but I would like also to, I mean, what I would like to say is that even if the statistics are showing that there are more cases of sexual violence being reported, that doesn't mean that actions are not taken, and that the action that is needed is a sustained action, and this will take a long time. We heard from my colleagues that it's very much about norms and values, how we can engage together. The issue of consent to get respected for who you are and for what you want to do is also a key issue to address. So I just would like to wish you all the best of luck in tackling this extremely difficult issue, and that you should rest assured Sweden will continue to support you. So thank you very much.